Okay, thanks. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Doing well. How are you, Joe?
It's good. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. So yeah, we're
Unmuted.
waiting for some committee members to show up. But
Cool.
did you have a good holiday?
Yeah, it went by way too fast. How about yours?
The same. It was yeah, a long list of stuff I wanted to get done, and then a very short list of stuff I got accomplished.
Right.
But
Is Doug Wall joining?
he maybe, I haven't heard from him, but he is the chair of the committee. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's attending today or not, though, to be honest.
Because I've got my wife and Larry DeVita on the line, and we are all U of D grads.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So Doug, I forget when Doug graduated. I don't want to say because I'm dating
Yeah,
myself.
I'm not going to guess because it never.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never
But
ends well.
he did a car wash up off of the Shoreway that I always remember.
Car wash. Where
Was it like 156th in the Shoreway? Has a big come over the top swoopy deal going on. And I think that was him. Plus he had a cute house in your neighborhood there. So
yeah, I think he did. Didn't he do the the bathhouse that used to be on Detroit there?
yes, I believe so. Yeah.
But yeah. And then the Bob, I think he did the Bob
So
stuff
Larry-
too, didn't he?
Yeah, hold on. I've got one more person from our. Oh, there he is. Larry, you all good? There you are, Larry. Oh, you're muted when you come into the call. So let's just check your audio.
There I am. Hello.
Okay, good. I don't know, Larry, if you notice that Doug Wall is the chairman, the committee chairman.
Did not.
We all share, Eva and I, we all share our University of Detroit heritage with Doug.
So it looks like we've got a couple committee members here. We'll give maybe a couple more minutes for some additional ones to show up. Just as a reminder to you guys, as the applicants, this is kind of a concept schematic level review in landmarks districts. We don't take a vote on that, so there won't be a motion made. There won't be a vote taking. It's just presentation of where you're at and then feedback from the committee. So I am gonna go ahead and go through our virtual meeting regulations and procedures, and then hopefully by the time I'm done with that, we'll have a couple more committee members here. Not that Mara and Phil are perfectly capable of providing all kinds of feedback, but the more the merrier. So the meeting shall be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the start of any presentation. Committee members will then leave the meeting for the duration of the case discussion. No presentation submissions will be accepted after the deadline. The chair will call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call of the committee. The administrator will introduce the first project and provide some background information when applicable. The meeting will then be turned over to the applicant to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the committee. Once the presentation is concluded, the administrator will read any received comments. The committee will then begin deliberations and project review. Please use the raised hand feature if you'd like to speak. After deliberations and review concludes, the committee will render its recommendation and vote. I guess this portion doesn't apply to today since we only have the one project on the agenda and it's only a concept, but just to finish reading, after the vote, the applicants may leave the meeting and the administrator will introduce the next project. All projects will follow the same format until all projects are heard by the committee. Once all projects are heard, the committee will call for any committee/administrative reports. After all reports have been heard, the chair will adjourn the meeting. Regarding community comments, any and all community members may provide their written comments, thoughts, or questions regarding the projects presented to the committee for review and approval. Community members may also telephone their comments or questions to the committee administrator. All comments, thoughts, or questions must be submitted to the committee administrator no later than 48 hours before the start of the meeting. Public comments or submissions made after the deadline will not be heard by the committee. Public comments will be collected by Landmark staff and sent to the committee members for review prior to the scheduled meeting, and then staff will summarize the received comments during the meeting. The applicant of the project is under no obligation to answer any community questions. Community members are invited to attend to the design review committee meetings, but there will be no open public comment period. And finally, all projects follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. All projects are being considered for the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. All projects are considered on a case-by-case basis, and the Ohio City Design Review Committee is advisory to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. Recommendations by this committee are not final actions. Depending on the scope of the project, submissions may be approved administratively or will need to be reviewed by the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. If that's the case, projects will be scheduled at the next available commission meeting after an action is taken. So with all that being said, it looks like we do have a couple more committee members here. I don't see Mr. Wall, so I'll ask Margaret, would you mind acting as chair for today's meeting?
Sure thing.
Thank you. And I think you hopped on just as I was saying, we only have the one agenda item. It is a concept, so there won't be vote taken, but we do still need to, I guess, call to order, do roll call, but that'll be the only
Great.
roll of the day.
Easy enough. So we'll go ahead and call to order the January 4th, 2024 meeting of the Ohio City Design Review Board.
Just to do roll call, Ms. Flaherty,
Here.
Mr. Frondorf, Ms. Land,
Here.
Ms. Marinucci, Mr. Persons.
I'm here, Dan. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry. Mr. Persons, don't see Mr. Taylor.
Here.
And Mr. Wall. Okay, and I emailed with Alex earlier, and I thought he was going to make it, so he may pop in, but at this point, Madam Chair, we do have quorum. So we can move forward with the first project, which is a concept, case number OC24-01, the Carriage Company, 2168 West 25th Street. We're looking at this for concept / schematic review. They're looking to do renovation, adaptive reuse, and this is the old Voss Industries building. So I'll hand it over to, I don't know if Dan or Joe who's gonna run through it, but I have your presentation up on the screen, so just let me know when you want me to advance through slides.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jessica. And thank you, committee members. We're really excited about this project. MRN has been working in Ohio City, I want to say about 15 years now, starting with the redevelopment of the United Bank building at the corner of West 25th Street and Lorraine. And as we've been working on that whole block, because when we acquired the United Bank building, it also came with the parking lots as well as with the retail that extended all the way down to Chatham. And when we were made aware that Voss was going to be relocating to Berea and that the former factory was going to go up for sale, we were really excited about the idea of continuing kind of our work all the way down to Monroe. And this was before they had started the redevelopment for Intro. This was, I think dating back to 2016, we were first started kind of poking around. But things being as they were, we didn't end up acquiring the property until I want to say 2020, 2021. So right during COVID. And that came with its own set of challenges. But all that being said, we really see this as a unique opportunity to not just grow the neighborhood and expand on the neighborhood, but to really create something very unique in Ohio City and in Cleveland, to really build on the energy of West 25th Street, to really expand the idea of the, energy around the West Side Market and along West 25th Street south, to really complement the work being done over at Intro and really to complement the work that we've been doing over at the United Bank building. And of course, to do what MRN's been doing for the last 20 some years, which is building a neighborhood by using adaptive reuse strategies in former industrial buildings. We did this with East 4th Street. We were able to do this with Uptown to a little bit different degree. Obviously, with the 629 building in downtown, and now with the Carriage Company building. Dan, if you'd be so kind as to go to the next slide there. So Carriage Company is our development name for the adaptive reuse of the Voss Aerospace manufacturing facility. It occupies the entire city block, bound by Chatham, West 25th, Monroe, and 26th Street. It was originally built as a Roush & Lang Carriage Company. Hence where we're taking the brand and the idea from. It is listed on the National Historic Register. We've also been able to work carefully with National Park Service and with SHPO to secure both federal and state historic tax credits. That's important because a lot of the work that we've been doing in the planning stages for this project over the last 2 years has been to align our vision and the project scope with the requirements of the Park Service. What's really neat about this project is it looks from the street like one building, but it's actually 18 different buildings, all kind of sutured together. The first of the buildings dates back to 1870s. And you go to that basement and man, it definitely is from the 1870s. With the final section of the building being completed in the early 2000s. Our vision for the project is an urban neighborhood, right? It's an urban village. One of the really neat things about the project is there's a network of alleyways that go through the buildings that were covered over back in the 1970s. They had put this, steel ceiling on Hancock and West 25th Street Place. And what we'd really like to do in the redevelopment of this project is to daylight those alleys to some great extent, creating this little network of pedestrian thoroughfares that will cut through the project and really bring life and activity not just to West 25th Street, but also to the alleys themselves and to the to Chatham and Monroe beyond. We also hope to open up some, some fresh air and some natural light into parts of the project. So our overall project scope is 126 new market rate apartments. They're almost all 1 bedrooms. We do have a handful of really, really amazing 2-bedroom units that we'll talk about when we get to the floor plan. We've got some retail space. We've got some office space. I can tell you guys that working on this project over the last 2 years, we've watched a lot of things come in and out of the project in terms of uses, and they continue to come and go through the project. Since COVID, we've seen challenges with lending, with cost control and construction, and with a retail and office market that is, to put it lightly, partially existing and certainly challenging. But through it all, we've kind of maintained our focus for this project on being a residential project first, being a neighborhood first, and then kind of having some of these other uses be allowed for, but not the main driver of the project. Dan, would you be kind of to go to the next slide? This is just a context for those of you who may not be familiar. The project location is just south of Chatham, right next to our United Bank project and right across from the Red Line Greenway Trail. As you guys are all aware, there's a growing neighborhood here focused around not just around the West Side Market, but around the RTA possible development. And this sits right there in that pocket. If you go to the next slide there, Dan. This shows it in a little bit more focused context, just showing it kind of nestled into the neighborhood, but also standing out as a part of the West 25th Street main thoroughfare there. And you can also see some of the natural connections, not just to the south of Lorraine community below, but also to our United Bank project just to the north. And obviously, this is a dated photo intro to the east there. And of course, the red light greenway shown by that line of trees. Dan, if you go to the next slide. These are some existing shots of the building. If you look, you can really start to make out the segmented nature of the project. If you look at the building, for instance, next to the word Voss, that little garage door with the 3 windows, that's an example of one of the buildings that was built over the alleyways, and one of the buildings that we really look forward to actually selectively removing in order to open up that alleyway network. Next slide. This is the existing parking lot that sits on West 25th Street. Our vision is to look at this as so much more than a parking lot, right? This could be a really great opportunity for public space engagement. We have, through another entity, we control the Citizens Pie building just to the north, and obviously the former front door to Voss just to the south there. Eventually, we could see this parking lot as a really great public space that maybe allows for some retail or restaurant uses to spill out into this area here. And draw some of the energy both out of the buildings, but also from the neighborhood itself. Dan, if you go to the next one. This is a view looking on Chatham, looking south at the project. Currently, there's a crowd trash there. We do see that area being opened up for other uses. But you can also see the yellow garage door, right? That alleyway right now terminates at a fence, and then there's a garage door just beyond. Again, in our vision, that garage door goes away, that brick structure around the garage door goes away, and that becomes an open alley progressing into an outdoor alley progressing into the project. And then if you go to the next slide, this gives you a view of the existing condition on the west view from West 26. The next slide, I think, should go to a view from the parking lot, looking at the facade on West 26th Street. I do want to note that when we acquired the Voss facility, we also got the parking lot on West 26th Street. We do have some later plans for that parking lot, but right now what we're just kind of presenting is and focusing on is the building itself. Next slide should show the Monroe elevation. And again, the opportunity to open up those windows as well. One more slide. Looking at the alleyway going into the most recent built building, which is that 2000s era steel structure. And then finally, this is the corner. This is actually my favorite shot of the project. Not because it's particularly beautiful, but this is actually taken from the trailhead for the Red Line Greenway. And I think it really speaks to the connectivity that this building has and this project has to different modes of transportation, to different modes of recreation, right? So you can be living here at Carriage Company, and then you can hop on your bike and be on the Greenway onto the trail in no time. This could be, a whole weekend of adventure right there. But you're also able to hop over to the RTA station. You can easily get downtown from here. You could live your entire, Carriage Company experience without a car because you're so tied into both the neighborhood as well as the different modes of transportation and accessibility. The project's also been around for a while, and I think the next slide will show is the actually, this slide shows the steel roof, the steel ceiling that was built out over the alleyway. And the next slide will then jump down. That's what it looks like underneath. And you can if you squint, you can make out the former facades, the exterior facades of the buildings there that have been covered up. And again, our goal is to turn these into exterior facades again. One more slide there, Dan. This is looking along, I believe it'd be called Hancock. This is looking with my back towards West 25th Street. Someone will have to move those boxes, but eventually we'd like this whole thing to be, a really interesting, exciting kind of, urban alleyway that goes into the project itself. And then Dan, if you go one more. Like I mentioned, this project's been around. This has been a factory for over 100 years. Larry from SA Group has, I think, camped out in this building for the better part of the 2 years that we've been working on it, and has been really instrumental in kind of driving both our creative vision as well as understanding the historic nature. So if you guys don't mind, I'd like to turn over to him really briefly just to talk about how we've gotten here.
Good morning. I'm Larry DeVita from SA Group. This is a sort of historic rendering of what the plant looked like sometime probably in the 1920s. The original tenant or owner, I should say, Baker Rowlang, was actually Roush and Lang Carriage Company, who had moved from the flats and had started building carriages here in the 1880s. And they started with a pair of buildings on 25th Street, right at the Hancock Alley, and the plant sort of grew from there, both north and south, and then across the West 25th Place alley, and then expanding sort of north and south once again from Hancock. Basically, as Joe was saying, there are 18 buildings and or major additions here, and each one has a little bit of a different character. The whole plant, ranges from, I think it's 1889 to 2013. So it's basically the entire history of industrial architecture and construction, during the 20th century. The whole emphasis of what we're doing with it, working with National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office, is to maintain as much of the character of the building as possible, trying to keep the historic windows. If we're replacing them with sensitive replacements, even though there'll be modern windows. Restoring the masonry. If you can see on the sort of back side of the rendering there are some sawtooth skylights, which we are looking at sort of restoring and reusing, and giving some of the apartments the opportunities for some really interesting north light. So like I said, the emphasis is maintaining the sort of historic character of the street front, and as Joe was saying, opening up the alleys back to sort of what the character of the plant is. One of the other interesting things in the building is there are bridges between buildings, and so opening those alleys up will really sort of show sort of those bridges and add some character and activity to those alleyways.
Dan, could you advance the next slide?
So here you can sort of see the building from above and how it sort of relates to the neighborhood, and then sort of acting as a gateway to that portion of Ohio City as you come across the bridge, across the RTA tracks. And you can sort of see the visibility of the different pieces, parts. We spent, as Joe said, a couple of months out there just field measuring it and trying to document exactly what's there. And it was fun because each segment has its own character. There's, I can't remember, like 6 or 7 different construction types, and every building, as time progressed, sort of progressed into a different sort of construction.
Dan, if you could go to the next slide too.
Yeah, on the left, you can see the facade of the building on West 26th, and to the far left of that, you can see that open alley which is, Hancock Street, but you can also see that the building goes over it. So the emphasis there is trying to keep that, and actually it'll become a residential unit, sort of bridging the alley and acting as a gateway into it. The building's very nice. It has lots of character as far as the historic brick, and then on the right you can see the alley. You can see the 3-story bridge down the alley. You can see the expression of the sawtooth skylights on this one building. So that's the kind of sort of character that we're trying to maintain.
All right. One more slide there, Dan. So this takes a look at the site plan for kind of the master vision of the project. Really what I wanted to focus on today, even though yes, we have the site control of the parking lot just to the west, we haven't fully worked that out yet. So really what I wanted to look at today and talk about was the historic buildings themselves, and particularly our plan for utilizing the upper floors for housing and other uses. This does show the overall site. We can start with the corner of Monroe and 25th Street. You'll notice that there's a 39 space parking lot there. We do have site control of both those parking lots, and we do see that as a residential parking facility, an outdoor one, followed by an indoor parking facility fronting on the opened up alley there. We also are putting in some select units, residential units on the first floor facing West 26th Street. We really think this does a nice way of adding some life and some activity onto 26th Street. We have explored the idea of also vacating West 26th Street and turning that into a private drive and pedestrian thoroughfare. One of the reasons that we're doing this is if we do develop that parking lot, is to bring that a little bit closer to the project. We have talked with neighbors about this idea as well as with the councilman. Other notes along the front facade of West 26th Street is at that corner of the daylighted Hancock Alley and West 26th to be our leasing office, as well as a bike parking and storage facility. We thought it was really important that we created like a front door for a lot of our residents to come in through that open alley and then go either into the main lobby or go into the leasing center. Flanking that leasing office is also going to be a residential unit. The purple represents a concept that we're working on. We haven't identified anyone for it, but you can see that there's space for retail as the project evolves, and that comes into focus a little bit more. But again, right now, what we fully fleshed out is the idea for parking, for our residential lobbies, as well as for our leasing office, bike storage, and apartments on the first floor. And then on the second floor, which is the next slide. Oh, here's some elevations. This does a nice job of just kind of breaking out the different buildings. We did this exercise as a part of our federal and state historic tax credit application. Each circled number above is a different building. So you can really see how this thing is a combination of different architecture styles, different eras, and different building construction types. Dan, if you go to the next slide, this just shows, I want to say that is the north elevation. And one more slide. This is the West 26th Street elevation. I do want to really quickly mention in building 11 on the first floor, we are envisioning those windows becoming individual front doors for individual units, right? Different apartment units. So you'd have these, we've been working with SHPO and the Park Service to come up with an acceptable design that will allow for one of those windows to be turned into a front door. It's very consistent with projects they've approved in the past, particularly in Northeast Ohio. And I think that's going to be a nice kind of element to the project is having either people coming and going out of their front door apartment there in building 11, or a little bit further down in building 13, the bike storage or the leasing office, before you get to building 14, which is the entrance alleyway into the project itself. The next slide, I think, shows just the north elevation of the project. This is looking at the project from Chatham. And then finally, the next slide should show the floor plans in a little bit more detail. We've talked about that first floor already. This again shows the project in its 4 key quadrants here, right? By opening up the alleys, you create these 4 unique buildings that are still connected on the floors above by bridges. Some bridges exist already and we'll be keeping them. And I believe in another instance, there'll be another bridge that we'll have to add. One of the things I want to mention is, even though today we're talking about the schematic and conceptual approval for the project on a whole, when we get into further design work, we're going to be focusing on the first phase of the project, which will be the buildings on the right side of the page. So the building with the leasing office in it, as well as the building just below it. That's the oldest part of the project there. That's what I, the Voss front door that also fronts on that parking lot, the parking lot that could become really cool public space. The next slide is going to show the second floor. And it gives you a feel for the residential unit layout that we've come up with. There's also some space for office as well as co-work. There's also a really cool opportunity for a community room and community patio. The next slide is going to get you a little bit more focus on the third floor, showing again the residential unit layout. You can see from the, if we were to zoom in, it's mostly 1 bedrooms with some of these really beautiful deluxe 2-bedroom units that have these breathtaking views of the downtown skyline. It actually looks right past and through the intro building, so it's a really nice vista. The next slide then shows the 4th floor, the final floor of the project there, again, showing residential units throughout. The next slide. This is just a conceptual rendering, giving you a perspective of what that alley might feel like once it's opened up. It also shows the bridge, the historic bridge that we'll be maintaining as a connector piece between the first 2 quadrants. And then the next rendering is just a quick shot of the interior, just showing you guys some of the design selections. One of the things I did want to bring everyone's attention to is the open ceiling. Historics is maintaining that we leave the ceilings open, which certainly is a cost driver as a part of this. There are acoustic consequences of leaving those floors open. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the work we've done already with both Park Service and SHPO. And then the next slide, talking just briefly about some of the amenities. We feel that bike parking is really important, especially secured bike parking. So we've created this indoor bike parking room on West 26th Street. This is directly connected to both the leasing office, the lobby, as well as to the street. Right now we're showing 36 bikes being parked in there, but that's really just a very high level. We haven't identified how they'd be attached or secured. We think we can actually maximize that space a little bit better. The next slide, I think, talks a little bit about the fitness center that we're looking at along West 26th Street. Again, putting this on the first floor so that you can get a little bit of residential activity, both going in and out of the fitness center, both from a vestibule off of the street, as well as direct access off the street, bringing a little bit of life into the plaza there. Next slide shows a concept of the co-work space that we're envisioning. This is going to be in a later phase in, I believe, building 17. And then finally, the next one is a rendering of the community space and a rooftop patio that we're looking at in the first phase. This is going to be directly across from West 26th Street, overlooking that open parking lot that we think could be a community engagement area. And I think the final slide shows just another rooftop patio that we've envisioned for the project. This would be in a later phase, looking out over Hancock Avenue. The last slide talks a little bit about we are cognizant of having parking at the corners there. And so we've engaged with Daru Landscape to start proactively thinking about the buffering, the plant selection, to make sure that we have a parking lot that meets the requirements of the city, is attractive, is shielded for the street, and actually feels like a part of the overall development. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you guys may have.
Thanks for this presentation. It's a really exciting and seems quite monumental in the project scope. When you talk about the phasing, is your approach going to be to do exterior repairs and alterations and then move inside on the phase building? Or are you thinking about like doing all the exterior, but then just phasing the interior redevelopment?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we're looking at the phasing, we would do the exterior work and roof work on the buildings that we would be renovating at that time. So if you're looking at this image here, we'd be looking at doing the facade work on buildings 1 and 2, opening up alley where it says 3, doing the facade work on building 11, 12, 13, opening up where it says building 14, and then 15.
And then from the Park Service point of view, did they give you a really broad range in your period of significance? And are they having you treat each of these buildings individually to the time that they're built? Or what was their feedback on that?
I'll jump in here. This is Larry at SA Group. So yes, each building is being basically treated separately. So as we go around and restore masonry, I mean, the masonry and the mortar have to match that portion of the building. And they are allowing us, I don't know if you noticed along 26th Street, and actually most of the building has paint to the first floor. Their opinion is not to remove it, but when we repaint, the paint on each individual segment needs to match the brick on that segment. So we're treating each one separately. And when we do windows, we've had some back and forth with them about that. I mean, where we can, we're going to match. There's existing replacement windows in much of the building, but where we're treating a full facade of reopening openings that have been blocked in, we're treating those in a historic way. And luckily we have some historic photos, so we know what the makeup of the windows was. And we've spent a lot of time on the interior. There are a lot of old exterior windows on the interior, so we've been measuring those and trying to work with window manufacturers to see to get the general appearance right on those kinds of things. But like I said, the way we're handling it is basically building by building from the facade point of view.
Thanks. Other questions from the committee or any other feedback?
I love the approach. I really don't, it really doesn't take much convincing to know that this is a use that works really well here. I would offer up from city architecture the West 25th Street lofts to the north as a solid kind of reference for a project that has has multiple buildings, multiple factory style buildings from different time periods that were kind of spliced together to create residential use. And then to the south, I know we've done the Pivot Center, which is another older building that's more of a cultural building that, like I said, I just think it's a good reference. To that rendering, I was just curious. I know it's conceptual. I was curious if the plan was to kind of paint things white or if that was just still kind of paint any kind of precast infill pieces white like that, or if that was still being tossed around, or like they here we're showing balconies and things like that. Was wondering if that was also a plan.
So we're looking at restoring the buildings back as much as we can to to the facades that were put in place. The first floor is undefined in a lot of ways because again, we don't know who the users are there just yet. So it's hard to say like what the storefronts or engagements will be down there, because we don't have the retail fully fleshed out yet.
Okay. Um, I think what I'm kind of looking forward to most is kind of getting more information. Like you guys you presented a really amazing kind of um visual sort of like description of what is going to go there, what could go there. And I think I just want to see more of it. And I'm kind of looking forward to that piece. Um, I'm curious about what a front door on West 25th might look like. Like I know I was living on Monroe, and so I know we had kind of security concerns over there. Um, and just in my neighborhood, you know, the police don't always show up for that portion of Ohio City. Um, so I'm curious to see kind of the lighting plan in these alleys, kind of the open plan in these alleys, the sort of images that make these places um, active, engaging, and safe. Um, and I was just I thought the elevations with the time periods broken down by the building was actually a very effective tool. I thought that was really kind of, you know, very telling about kind of what's happening here. Um, and I guess I was also gonna say that so some of the plans that are presented on the sheets, that blue in the background is like killing me sometimes with some of the like enlarged plans. Like it's like overlaying things. Dan, if you go to the next few slides, like where it's just kind of like overlapping stuff, it kind of is hurting me a little bit. Um, but other than that, I just like I said, I think I'm looking forward to um kind of a more complete, more fleshed out presentation and view of everything because this I think is going to be a wonderful project.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that.
I apologize, and I know that this has been referenced several times. I just have a toddler homesick, so I've been able to didn't catch everything. Can you guys go over what financial or like what are there historic tax credits on the table? Any criteria, like is anything basically from a tax credit or historic financing standpoint and or anticipated timeline related to that?
Yep, that's a great question. We've secured both federal and state historic tax credits. We were awarded tax credits from the state. I want to say it was last September.
Okay. And is it when do you guys anticipate project or at least like the first phase to start?
Sure. So right now we are about 70% through our construction document work. We're working with our contractor right now to get some initial pricing. One of the biggest challenges, obviously, is the lending environment. So we're working with a couple different banks right now. They're really encouraged by the fact that we've got the tax credits in place. So we're trying to make sure that what we're pricing out both satisfies their requirements and some of the design directions they've given us, as well as makes the project, feasible and sustainable. We're going to be meeting with our design team probably towards the end of the month to see where things land.
Okay, great. Wishing you luck there. I know that like what was it, the Dallad group has been they have the tax credits and I think that they've had some similar hardships with the private financing. So I hope that things can line up for you guys. My only other question, I echo my colleagues in terms of like the exterior treatment. I don't even have, any further comments there. My one question though, for the interior, when you're keeping the infrastructure exposed, what is the, and again, this is not really in our purview, I'm just curious, how do you fire rate that? Like, is there a plan for that?
All right, Larry.
We're looking at using an intumescent product for that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I mean, it's varying from like 20 to 65 mils. And so in a lot of places, at least hopefully we'll get some of the grain character of the wood still showing, but most of it's been painted anyway, so it shouldn't sort of alter the interior appearance too much.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
Dan, can you hear me? Could you go to slide 20, the site plan? Yeah, there. A couple of comments on the site plan. One, you mentioned vacating or potentially vacating West 26th Street. Unless there's renderings for development on the west side of the street, my default is not to vacate public rights of ways. Alleys maybe perhaps, but a full-fledged street, I think you have to present a pretty strong case as to why that would be necessary here, including the alley that runs east-west. That's on the top portion of that screen, cutting through the parking lot, that alley that currently exists. You can make the case for it, but I think the default is not to vacate public streets. Alleys, I think, are easier to make the case for, but here, that's giving me a little concern. The second area on the site plan is there on the corner of Chatham and West 25th, the surface parking lot. I know you talked about landscaping it to help with the screening, but that's a corner, and I know that there's a parking lot there now. There's no buildings there, but wondered if you wouldn't consider building on that corner to help hold the corner, to help enclose it and make it more pedestrian friendly than just having a surface parking lot there, even though it might be screened by some grasses or trees. The large parking lot on the other side of the project, it's there, it's existing, not much to do with that, though it's not my preference to have so much surface parking, especially compromising probably half of a block. I know that there are a couple demolitions that you've proposed. One you said on the southeast corner. Can you walk us through exactly which building is being demolished and the history of that building?
So right now, the buildings that we're focused on demolishing are the buildings that cover the alleyways. So if you are looking at this site plan here, the West 26th Street alleyway would be opened up all the way up to that purple line right there, right? That purple line represents a 2003 era steel building that was constructed. They constructed it all the way up to touch the facade of the what's called Building 17, which is just to the right of it. So in our initial phase, we're going to leave that up, but we'd like to daylight up to that point, and then daylight Hancock from West 26th Street all the way down to West 25th Street.
Okay, that I have no issue with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. But could you, on your title page or the second slide, it said that there was a demolition at the southeast corner of the project.
Sure. There is an opportunity there and again, it's part of we still haven't flushed out who these users are. There is a very small shed building. If you go to, Dan, if you scroll back a little bit to that picture that I talked about, you took from the Greenway. So go back 2 more. Keep going there. Alex, do you see the brown building with the door?
Yeah, the single story brown building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the one?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have any history on that building?
Larry, do you have any history on that?
It's a former gas station from the 1930s, and as part of the Historic Places nomination, it wasn't found to be sort of an integral part of the plant, since it didn't relate to Roush and Lang. So yeah, so it's that little brick gas station, and then also there's a little white like metal infill, which
Yeah,
is
I see that.
in 2013 in between those two buildings.
Okay. All right. Is there anything of, it doesn't appear to be, but is there anything of architectural integrity or character that would be deemed historic?
If you go back one more slide, Dan, you'll get another view of it. It's pretty not there.
Okay.
The only thing that's in there, they used it as a unloading area for semi trucks, and I believe there are a couple electric panels inside. It is pretty nondescript and unremarkable.
Okay.
And,
Thank you.
and to be clear, Alex, too, as
Yeah.
a part of our, again, it's a concept right now. We've identified that as something that could be taken down to open up this corner a little bit for, you know, later users to enjoy. But for our focus, you know, when we come back for final review, we're going to be focused on the Chatham and West 25th and 26th areas.
Okay. Thanks. Dan, could you scroll to the slide that shows the West 25th as it exists? There's a picture of it. Yeah, perfect. Right. So I think in your presentation, you mentioned that the garage door to the left of the Voss signage there, that is the entrance to the alley that you're going to open up. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. When was that facade built? Do you know?
Larry, do you have that real quick?
Give me a second here. Yeah, I think I do.
Well, while you look for it, what I was wondering, what my questions were going to go to, is I love the idea of opening the alleys back up. I think that's
1985.
terrific. But could you keep that facade and then remove the garage door so that there's that facade maintains, but the alleyway is open and inviting? In other words, demolish the roof of it, that's fine, but keep that one facade.
Yeah, we felt, I think that's an interesting idea because you maintain the street wall, Alex.
Yes, yep.
In our mind, there was what made this project unique is the idea of kind of segmenting it so that you had these different quadrants. It also would allow us to do something interesting on the roof of the building next to that with the linear windows on the second floor. You could activate that roof looking out over an open street. That just seemed to kind of create more of an animated place. And then also, if we did have some kind of retail or restaurant use on that first floor, they would then be able to open up onto that alley. We just felt that might be a little bit better way to pull some energy from 25th Street into the project and having it just be an open street.
Yeah, those are all great objectives, and I don't want to interfere with those objectives at all. And my proposal, I wasn't contemplating it is hampering those objectives at all. In fact, it might add to it. I don't feel all that strongly, just having studied it for the past 50 minutes, but I think it's worth considering.
I appreciate that, Alex.
Okay. And I know that you're really early on, and I know that there was some just very tentative discussion of the materiality, and we'll get to that in a later presentation. But to the extent you can match, as I'm sure you will, the materials of the windows and doing it the historically appropriate way would be appreciated. And then on the, I will defer to the National Park Service, but I was surprised to hear that their recommendation was to keep the paint on the brick, the part that had been painted. Is there a way of safely removing that paint and restoring the brick that's beneath it, behind it?
They were very reticent to do that. I mean, it can be very difficult, and their concern is that we would end up damaging the brick. And so, you know, as an architect, I hate painted brick anyway, but
As do I.
But it's probably better to preserve what's there to keep the paint, unfortunately.
Okay.
So that was discussed with them, though.
Okay. I will defer to their expertise. I think for now, those are my comments. If I had to rank them, I would go back to the site plan and rank those first. The demolition, from what you've mentioned of the building on the southeast corner, doesn't seem to be a problem. I'm sure we'll have a site visit for that as the plans progress. And I love the idea of opening the alleys and of reusing these buildings. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Chris Schmidt from Ohio City Incorporated. Just jumping in to first off say we're excited about this project. I think it does a lot to reactivate that corner of the neighborhood in a way that we haven't seen in many, many years, and that's great. I think our biggest concerns are making sure it's integrated well into the neighborhood that's already there. I know that MRN keep talking about this as being a neighborhood and building a neighborhood, and I think our objective is how do we intertwine this project into the neighborhood that's already here, and making sure that all of these residents are part of the neighborhood that we've already built here. One of those is the connection across that parking lot on I think it's the 28th side of that parking lot. I believe it shows, or it did at one point show, that it was closed off to the neighborhood and that somebody would have to go all the way around to get to the project. And so how do we think about integrating that surface parking lot, even while it is a surface parking lot, in a way that it makes it feel like it's part of the neighborhood that exists? And then the other bigger point is we certainly appreciate all of the work that MRN has done with the local neighbors to talk about vacating 26th Street, talk about some of the different impacts that are going to happen in the construction phase and with the growth of this project. I think that's great. We still want to encourage them and are still looking forward to working with them on a bigger community process as the program gets filled out, as those first floor spaces start to have real uses tied to them. That's going to be an important part of this to make sure it's as welcome to the neighborhood. I think as we saw the success of Intro and how everybody feels so strongly about how Intro went well, a lot of that was getting the neighbors involved early and often. And so the more we can do of that for this project, the better.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. You know, we did have an opportunity to do a meeting with the residents on West 26th Street. Tim Del Papa was instrumental in helping us set that up. And that actually drove the design decision that we made with that connection. Their preference was to actually close off the alley at the parking lot. We talked with both of the owners at the corner there. You won't get a good shot of it from the slide deck. But yeah, so that is done very purposefully. They did not want it to be a continuous passage through onto the alley.
Okay, I think that's great, and part of that may also be telling, if you do, as Alex mentioned, show the plans for that parking lot in the future. It's I just don't want the Berlin Wall right between the neighborhood and the back of whatever potential development happens there, and so that may be a concern for down the road and not for now.
Appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.
I agree with my colleagues on what they've mentioned, especially Alex regarding the site plan. But I just want to say thank you guys for a really thorough presentation, and this seems like a really exciting project. And I'm excited to see it come back to us for final review.
Thank you.
All right, any other thoughts from the committee? All right.
This is a minor point, but when you do come back, have lighting, exterior lighting be part of your presentation. That's all.
And Joe, any other specific feedback that you feel like you need from the committee at this point, or does this feel good?
This feels great. I really appreciate all the comments and feedback. We're moving as expeditiously as possible, so I'm hopeful to get back in front of this group, you know, in the next few months.
Great. Well, we look forward to reviewing phase 1 in more detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Joe and I guess team is towards that advancing. We do have you penciled in to make your conceptual level presentation to the Landmarks Commission on the 25th of January.
Perfect.
So you know we can discuss that between now and then. But yeah, if you feel like you've gotten everything good feedback from this committee, then that's all we have for the agenda today.
Well, thank you all very much for the review.
So with that, think I can go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Great.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks for your time.